Hey everybody, welcome to the first podcast of Cinephiles. Yeah, this is kind of a big thing.
It is. It is our very first podcast as a couple, and we are very excited because we just love doing these movie reviews, and we're finally getting a chance to do one together because we live in different areas of the state, as most of you know. So it's pretty exciting for us, and our first review together for a podcast is going to be
Cowboys and Aliens.
Cowboy and Aliens. I don't know how to make it. Yeah, there you go. That's like a creature
With a cat.
with a mouth inside its mouth. Something like that. Isn't that that's Aliens, right?
Yeah, the original concept, yes.
Yeah. I want a big yellow. I wish I had a big yellow contraption, like exosuit, to walk around in for this review.
Get your hands off of her.
It doesn't matter that people can't see me. Who cares? It's for me. It's not for them.
I would grab you.
I'm walking around with like giant. Anyway, forget it. So why don't you give us the basic rundown, Ken, of the film itself?
All right.
And what we can expect, or what they can expect.
All right.
From the film, without giving anything away. Of course.
I like that. Well, the basic premise is in the title itself. Set in a Wild West kind of setting. You've got Daniel Craig, a mystery cowboy, very a la Clint Eastwood, in that Man with No Name.
Yep.
And you've got Harrison Ford as a hard-nosed rancher with an axe to grind with the past, but that's brought up throughout the film. And you've got a town stuck in the middle called, I believe, Redemption.
Absolution.
Absolution, thank you.
It's called Absolution.
I'm thinking of too many other cowboy films. Absolution, yes. And a town obviously in the middle of nowhere. And things go from there. Daniel Craig wanders in. You see it from the preview. And alien invasion ensues. Very basic. So the title doesn't steer away from anything that you're not expecting.
No, it's pretty on the nose, and you know, it's interesting because Ken, great wrap up there. You know, Daniel Craig walks in with this contraption on his arm, and everyone kind of sees it and says, "What's that metal thing on your arm? What's it doing?" And like, everybody's kind of wondering what's happening with this guy. Daniel Craig. If there's one thing you can say about Daniel Craig, he loves staring at people.
Oh yeah,
it's his favorite thing to do because man, oh man, does he stare at people in this movie?
Yeah,
there's he hardly does anything else but stare. And Harrison Ford just looks like he's pissed.
Yeah, and grisly, like an
very,
old
very
uncle
grisly.
Who's just been wronged for too many family reunions.
Yep. I actually watched a review, not a review, pardon me, an interview with him on Conan recently where Conan handed him a Smurf puppet and said, "The Smurfs knocked you off the box office, or they tied you and then beat you in the box office this week. What would you like to do to this puppet?" And Harrison Ford just holds it for a while, like keeps talking, and then slowly rips the head off of Papa Smurf, ever so slightly, as almost if he didn't want anybody to see. He just kind of rips it very, very slowly off of the Smurf's head. He's just an old man, and he's been through a lot of stuff, and you can tell that he's not that he's into it for the sake of being into it, but you can tell he wasn't passionate about this film. Daniel Craig, I feel like he really tried to do his best. But anyway, why don't you run down in just a snapshot view, like your pros of the film?
Okay. All right. Just going off of what John said, I do kind of believe that with Harrison Ford, always an enjoyable actor to watch on screen. But comparatively to kind of the characters that he's been able to portray and bring to life, Harrison Ford as a person owns a ranch, has horses. He's very comfortable in this kind of setting.
Right.
So you can kind of tell how he's not really bringing anything to the table he doesn't already do in his normal life.
Yeah.
With Daniel Craig, a solid performance as Daniel Craig. He has that intense, grisly look.
Yep.
Very, very.
Yep.
He's definitely our generation's kind of Steve McQueen, the BA of cinema in its way. He's got his own look. He's comfortable and he's confident in it. And honestly, that makes him a good-looking actor to watch on screen. But with the lack of dialogue that he gives to us, and just kind of with the solid stares, it's still a little, I feel like, detracting from connection. Other pros I liked from the film, we just don't generally get many Westerns nowadays. So having a Western in itself is an enticing idea.
Yep.
So when you see something Cowboys, you're just like, yes. And when you see actors like Harrison Ford, Daniel Craig, Olivia Wilde making a great, beautiful appearance, it's something you want to see. The film, thankfully, in my opinion, I think John agrees with me, does not go the tongue-in-cheek route. So many people, when they see the title, think of some kind of comedy, some kind of very, very cheesy, and I was really happy that Favreau and the writers decided to take a more realistic approach, because we get comedy, we understand it, I'm sure it's been done, we've all seen Blazing Saddles, we've seen enough alien invasion films that don't take themselves completely seriously, and it's nice to integrate something that is serious with something a little very imaginative and put a good serious spin on it. And my last thing, in terms of the pros that I've got, is I thought the visual effects were fantastic.
Yeah.
I thought they were so well integrated into a dirty landscape like a Western. The aliens themselves were terrifying in their own ways, very creepy, slimy, in certain places. It wasn't E.T., and that was such a good way to steer completely away from. I was very pleased with that.
Yeah, totally agree with him. The pros that I came out of the movie with reflect Ken's really well. I think that the setting of the movie was really well done. The landscape was shot really beautifully. We don't get a whole lot of big sweeping landscape shots in the film. They're generally just setup shots for whatever scene is in that area. But those that you do get, you really honestly can see these characters living in this time. You believe that, Daniel Craig is this guy, that Harrison Ford completely embodies the rancher character that he was given. Completely. I bought him from the start.
Yep.
Totally bought him from the start. There's a great attention to detail that I think Jon Favreau, the director of the movie, really brings to most of his films. There's a huge attention to detail that really just kind of shines through in this film. So you can tell that he really wanted to make it authentic and make it real. I think that Favreau and Steven Spielberg, who is the executive producer in the film, they both really cared enough about the source material to make it as serious as they could.
Yeah.
It's derived from a graphic novel, if you don't know that.
Which is a thick comic book, for those of you who don't know.
Thick comic book, a kind of like big epic comic book. Generally, they don't have to do with actual superheroes either, graphic novels. But that's where the story comes from, and you can tell that they cared enough about that origin to really make it a serious film and not something that people would laugh at and say, oh, it's Cowboys and Aliens, whatever. We're gonna tease this idea. It was more something that they wanted to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So you can tell that, and I appreciate that because it's a challenge for people, especially when they kept the title what it was. They didn't try to change the title to Absolution or something like that would make it appear to be more serious. They kept the tongue-in-cheek title of the graphic novel, but made it a little more serious.
Definitely, yeah.
So all the actors turned in really solid performances, I think. I was pretty happy with every performance in there. There were a few that kind of get overshadowed, I think, and I can't say too much about that without giving things away. But I wish in another review I wrote beforehand, I wish I had seen a little more from the characters and learned a little more about their lives, so that I could care about them more. But in terms of the actual acting, everything's good, and there's nothing in this film that isn't promised to you that you don't feel like you get at the end of the movie.
Definitely, yes.
You don't go in expecting like this grandiose, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to learn about the meaning of life in this film. No, it's not that. It's entertainment, and that's what you get from the film. So if that's what you're looking for, rest assured, it is there in spades.
Definitely.
So, some cons, my friend?
Cons. I love a good...
Not James Caan.
Ah, dang it. Well, that's what I was going for.
Yeah, I know.
Well, so we did have a lot of good things to say about it. The things that we were slightly disappointed on, or wish could have been better, honestly, are a little bit more than we were actually kind of comfortable to be honest about. But hey, this is a review. So first off,
Yep.
I think for a premise like Cowboys and Aliens, that can take us anywhere it wants. You know, Jon Favreau, in a way, he has been paid to kind of babysit us, like any film, to put us in some seats and to entertain us for 2 hours. For a film that can take us anywhere it wants, I feel like it was afraid to really take us out of the front yard in a way. You know, it's stuck in a very comfortable place of, this is a Western, and this is as far as we're going to go in a Western. This is also a sci-fi film, and this is as far as we'll go in this sci-fi film. The film almost seemed purposely trying to prevent us from showing anything fascinating. It was trying to, just because the film was set in the Wild Wild West, you felt like we never got to take any real sci-fi twists and turns, and you know,
exactly.
I mean, in the end, you know, you see sci-fi films. Comparatively, like the classic summer film, Independence Day. You know, you're looking at an alien invasion film, very basic premise, and instead of keeping us on Earth at near the last third of the film, we go into outer space. We take a chance and fight back in outer space. And I'm not saying the film needed to do that necessarily, but it should have. I was hoping for some surprises, how they were going to integrate sci-fi with the West in a way that we weren't expecting. I also feel like I agree with John in a lot of ways that with a film that has a good ensemble cast of characters that you enjoy, there was a lack of things that really fascinated and got you interested. That goes both visually and character-wise. And then also, as something that I think that John and I are really going to agree on, this was not one of Favreau's best direction films. I really feel like you can even consider this one of those notable films in his canon of filmography. It lacks a lot of flair, a lot of style, things that we have come to expect in the last few Favreau films, like obviously Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2. I mean, come on, Iron Man is definitely one of the best, if not probably the best comic book film that has been made in every aspect, character, visuals, and plot.
Dark Knight excluded, because
yes.
that's a realm unto itself.
Yes. We love you, Christopher Nolan, and we dare not slander your beautiful work of art. But at the same time, with the visuals that we expect from Jon Favreau, there is also a lack of heart. For a man that's directed wonderful family films like Elf, and even Zathura, which, you know, is a forgettable film, but a family film, very, very much in the Jumanji sense, but also films that are adult themed, like Swingers. You know, films about coming of age in LA. These kinds of things give great character, and surprisingly lacking. You come out of the film wondering if this was kind of maybe even a go-between for Jon Favreau, maybe just like an enjoyable idea, but a film that you know, he's got Harrison Ford and Daniel Craig who would pass that up as a director, but at the same time, like, he had other things on the horizon. And my last thing is, I really felt like the script was bare-boned and vague in all the wrong places. There are some places where the script is purposely vague and you enjoy that mystery, but there are certain places, and this kind of goes along with John's idea of a lack of character, that there are places where it could have been meatier, and that kind of hurt it, in my opinion.
Meatier. Thinking of, like,
I see what you did there.
Space, aliens, Cowboys is a meteor. Whatever. Anyway, I'm completely on board with everything Ken said. I have a few points of my own as well. I feel like this film sits really comfortably in the not great but not terrible realm. You know, it is not something where you would walk out of the film and say, you know, unless you had incredibly high hopes for it, you wouldn't walk out of the film and say, oh, that was so bad. It wasn't a bad film. I will just blanket say that it wasn't a bad film.
Agreed.
But it was a film that you will forget about half an hour after you see it. And it's sad to say that, because Ken and I both walked into the film, we saw it together, and we both had high hopes for the film because of how much we respect Favreau, and we know how much he loves movies and how much he enjoys making quality movies. You know, we've read enough interviews and seen enough things on the internet where he's talking about his craft and how much he loves it, and it was just kind of sad to see him kind of succumb to just the novelty of this concept, like Cowboys and Aliens, and not kind of take it a step further, like Ken said, and bring it into a truly, like, excellent cinematic experience. It was just simply the story. You got the story in the film, and everything, honestly, everything in the movie services the story. And most of the time, that's actually a really good thing, because you don't want actors to go on and on and on because they, they love hearing themselves talk, but it doesn't service the story at all. You generally want the story to drive the film, but in this case, it's not even necessarily just the story, but it's the plot points of the story completely drive the movie. And so you get very little backstory. And I hated that. I love having backstory in films because it makes me care about the characters. I can't care about somebody that I see on the street until I, learn who they are and what they love and things like that. And then once, that happens, you learn to start caring about them. And it's the same thing with film. You need to know who these characters are before you can start caring about them in any real way. Yep. And the way that the backstory was told for some of the characters is told throughout the film. And by the time you care, so much stuff has happened to them that it's almost too late. And it's a weird way to put it, but that's how it felt. I agree that there was very little lack of style. The story itself, it was interesting for what it was, but it could have been a lot better. Could have been a lot more interesting, I think. And nothing really wowed me in this film either. I sat in the theater and I waited for the next thing to happen. I wasn't necessarily excited about what was coming up next. I was just waiting for the story to unfold because there I was sitting in the theater. I wasn't going to leave. So I let the story play out, but I wasn't excited for what was coming up next. Yeah. So in summary, from me, Cowboys wasn't a bad film, but it could have been a lot more. I think an extra 15 minutes of backstory really would have changed a lot. You would have cared about the characters more. What happens to the characters once you see them in their present state would have mattered to you. Things like that. So if you really love alien invasion movies and westerns, I wouldn't even say one or the other. But if you love both, I would say go see this film. Otherwise, spend your money on something that is more entertaining that's out in the theaters this summer. That's just my recommendation. But I would definitely say there are other movies out in theaters right now that are good enough to spend your money on. This, I would say, is probably not one of them. If you want to see it, just wait for the DVD to come out in what seems like 3 months these days.
So true.
Yeah, it's going to come out pretty soon. So that's my wrap up and my grade for it. I'm not sure if we're going to have. We haven't even discussed.
We'll do separate grades. Yeah,
separate grades. So my grade is just a solid C. It's a C film. It's average. It's not terrible, but it's not great.
My wrap up, very, very simple. It really is your basic summer entertainment film. It provides everything that you're looking for in an entertainment value kind of setting. It gives you exactly what you're told, and it tries to deliver on that. Sadly enough, though, it feels like it doesn't get to enough of it, and I think in the end it doesn't make a real impression, and that was such a disappointment. I have to echo what John said. We both went into the film really with not high expectations, just hopeful, enjoyable expectations to really just be like, man, that was serious and like intense, and that was a classic line, that was a memorable scene, that the effects were great to the action. Nothing seemed to really deliver on that aspect. So I have to echo John completely. If you love both genres with a passion, you love yourself a sci-fi film and you gotta love a Clint Eastwood Western, go see it. You'll really enjoy that kind of integration. They did a very, very well job on it. But if you're hesitant in any way, you're questioning it, there are many, many great films, and we not only say that in terms of this specific type of film, entertainment-wise, but in any way, romantic comedies, your fantasy films, your more serious dramas. There are a lot of great films this summer, and this film isn't really bringing it in that way. So please feel free to go see something else if you're hesitant, and if you do want to see it, you got Redbox, you got Netflix. It'll come out in a few months. My grade is about the same. I decided to give it a C+, just because in a way I've seen enough films in the past 6 months that have really kind of that have met a standard but have not even entertained me. And thankfully with this film, in a way at least, it did make me laugh a little bit in certain ways, and it did make me go, that was kind of cool. So I don't, it is your average film, and thankfully it's not my end all be all basic average film. It is just it's a little bit better than average. But sadly we were expecting a little bit more, I think. So
I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, that was our review for Cowboys and Aliens. We love that you guys are checking our site. Keep checking it, cinephiles.weebly.com. We're going to have something up at least every week for you guys. We love movies, and we've seen a lot of them. So there's a lot to review. We're looking forward to it. And for Ken, I'm John, and...
For John, this is... Wait, for...
What?
No, wait, what? For Ken, this is John?
We're new!
Oh!
We're new at this!
Oh, gosh. Well, let's just end with the tagline. What's the tagline?
Cinephiles. Honest reviews in dishonest times.